federal government at first appeared to be coming in and do a neutral investigation. And what the federal government did find, of course, was that it was the police and not the Panthers who had fired. Well, under their cover, though, the federal government, under the cover of appearing neutral, the federal government hid their own role, which was that it was their informant who had gotten a floor plan of the apartment, and their informant had given their floor plan to Ed Hanrahan's raiders.
I was supposed to be one of the murdered Panthers, okay? However, my plans changed that evening, and the informant, William O'Neill, was unaware of the change in plans that I had made. So my plans had changed, and I was not in the apartment. Oh, I was in the apartment early, but I left the apartment. And so I wasn't there. So they went to Plan 2 in order to get rid of me. They raided my apartment the next morning on December 5th, shot my door down, and they thought that I was in the apartment.
There had been a systematic effort by the FBI in Chicago and nationally to destroy the Panthers. Previously, the FBI in Chicago had sent a letter to the head of the El Rukns, Jeff Fort, telling him the Panthers were trying to assassinate him. Didn't he want to take some action to prevent that? They had deliberately attempted to provoke things between the Panthers and other groups and attempted to discredit the Panthers publicly.
They didn't have to kill every leader. All they had to do was kill one of the most important and up-and-coming and messianic leaders who was doing what Fred Hampton was doing, to send the message to all those young folks, whether they be black or white or Latin or whatever, who wanted to get involved in the struggle, that these are, this is the game that you're getting involved in. We'll kill you in your bed.
I think during different periods the government uses different tactics, you know, and sometimes their methods will be to publicly discredit groups, to jail people. We saw that sometimes with regard to the Wobblies, they actually did kill people. We saw with regard to the Communist Party, they frequently would jail people or attempt to ruin their reputations. I think with regard to the black movement in particular, the escalation of the government's attacks was very clear. And I think assassination, setting people up for internecine rivalries which could lead to deaths, I think the government has shown a willingness to use any form of violence that it felt was necessary.
What are we fighting for? The love of freedom cause, and we've got to win. Depression, in the air. Depression, everywhere. Depression, in the air.
The FBI itself, its structure, was one which was never, of course, happy with the struggle. The fact that Martin Luther King was, phones were tapped and the problems that J. Edgar Hoover gave him was clear. We only put King out. We expected it from us and SNCC, but certainly King was not a flaming revolutionary calling for the destruction of America. He was a reformist, trying to, in fact, improve America and was good for the image of America.
Within the FBI, who viewed itself as the vanguard of fighting, you know, communism and so forth, they were always afraid that civil rights and the thrust for voting rights and so forth was, quote, a communist plot.
You take Martin Luther King, that is being led by communists all over this great country, feels that he has the key to the White House. He has the telephone call to the White House that can get anything he wanted.
I spoke for the white people. The white people rallied behind it, and we kicked the living hell out of the niggers, sent the out-of-town niggers to the hospital and out of the state, put back to their own hometowns where they ought to have been, and the niggers in St. Augustine got quiet and went back over nigger town where they belong.
Our feeling was that the FBI agent from the South was indistinguishable from his community.
The FBI had to work with the local law enforcements. That was their task. So it was clear here, first of all, they have comradeship from being in the same type of job, law enforcement agencies, and they were comrades from being in the South there together, not having too much work, joking together, and probably had social life together. And since the local police were the enemies, were our enemies, and the FBI was supposed to be our allies, it meant an automatic split between them, which never occurred.
Well, I've just gotten through
couple of weeks ago with a 45 or 46-day battle of Ingram Park, I call it. That's the park there in Birmingham where we stopped Martin Luther King. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we had that nigger whipped.
FBI in the South, rather than stopping Klan violence, would in fact allow it to happen.
Mr. Schwartz. But that was the problem with the Birmingham Police Department. What about the FBI? Did you ever discuss with them why they didn't do anything? Mr. Rowe. Yes, sir. I was told by the FBI. They said, well, who the hell are we going to report it to? The police department was involved in it. The police department helped set it up. We are an investigating agency, not an enforcement agency. All we do is gather information. This was my answer. Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Rowe, were you an informant in the Klan? Mr. Rowe. Yes, I was. Schwartz. From when to when? Rowe. From approximately 1959 to 1965. Schwartz. In 1965, did you surface in connection with the murder case? Rowe. Yes, I did. Schwartz. Whose murder and what role did you play in that case? Rowe. I was in the automobile the evening that Mrs. Viola Louiso was killed by a Klansman.
At the high point of FBI involvement with the Klan, 1 out of 4 Klansmen was an FBI agent. So a lot, if not all, of Ku Klux Klan policy and actions were being directed by or acquiesced in by the FBI. And this led to the FBI and its CointelPro program and its other racially oriented programs actually being implicated in and instigating crimes, civil rights crimes, murders and such things. The Birmingham church bombing, the assassination of the civil rights workers, the Freedom Riders, Viola Louiso, for one, the people in Philadelphia, Mississippi. That Rowe was involved in all of this, and he was an FBI informant. He's the one who pulled the trigger, or at least fired a shot in one of the incidents. He was involved in the bombing, and again, connected to the FBI.
Hoover always felt that civil rights was a threat to the country. So not threat to the country. I don't believe he was a threat to the social order, to the order of things. And therefore, as the protector of not only, quote, the country, which he didn't believe that we were part of, but the order of things which he knew we weren't a part of, anything that threatened the order of things, he had a right to use tactics to destroy it.
There was an explanation for why our housing was bad, our education was poor, our political power was limited, and that explanation was that we were held as colonial subjects within the United States. It's not a perfect explanation. It's an analogy to situations in Africa and in Asia that we could see that fit us. Therefore, colonialism had been denounced by the United Nations, and people were entitled to their independence, and they were justified in breaking out of that type of control. That was the basic American history.
Police in our community couldn't possibly be there to protect our property because we own no property. They couldn't possibly be there to see that we receive the due process of law for the simple reason that the police themselves deny us the due process of law. And so it's very apparent that the police are only in our community, not for our security, but the security of the business owners in the community, and also to see that the status quo is kept intact.
No, hey! You see that? You see, that's what caused it. You see that? Nothing but a 13-year-old kid. You see that? What are you guys standing here for?
Police brutality remains as a major issue in the black community, and I'm sure in cities across the country. And probably will remain, because if you just examine what the police department is, it is the military arm of the establishment. So what do you expect of it? You expect it to protect the interests of the establishment.
When you talk about law and order, the very law and order that you talk about oppresses us. So therefore, we are for the extermination of that law and order. And you have shown us clearly that we can only do it by being armed.